I got my big break in radio, to be honest with you. I was working at UPI Radio Network at the time. And my big break came when a guy named James Huberty went crazy in San Diego. Now, I'd been there for a little while, and I was, mainly a part-time guy, and just, a stringer mainly is what I was. And so it was during the week of the Democratic National Convention in San Francisco, and the John DeLorean trial was taking place at the same time in Los Angeles. And my boss, Bob Fuss, was in San Francisco covering the political stuff, but we needed somebody to cover the DeLorean trial because it was really a big thing. And like I said, I was a stringer, but they would hire me to staff the bureau whenever Bob Fuss was not there. We had to be out traveling, which was quite a bit. So I got to do some Mondays and Tuesdays and things like that. And what they did was, since everybody was gone, they hired me to staff a week at a time until Bob came back or the DeLorean trial was over. So it was about 10 minutes to 7 or so. I got off at 7 o'clock. I was walking out the door, and Doug Dowie, who was the Wireside bureau chief, we were in the same basic offices. We had our own studios. And Doug said, "You may want to check with Washington. We just had something go down in San Diego that they may want you to cover." And I said, "Well, okay." So I walked back in the studio and I called Washington, and they said, "Yeah, they would have Lou Geiserman call me from San Francisco. He was at the convention. He was our news director at the time for the entire network." And so I checked the wires real quick to find out what was going on, because we were just barely starting to get the story going. And as it turns out, James Huberty walked into a McDonald's in San Diego, full body armor, weapons and stuff, and just started opening fire. And I forget how many people were killed but wounded, but it was a lot. And so I got a call back from Lou Geiserman, and he said, "Well, this is what's happening. We need you to cover it. What do you think? Do you want to drive down to San Diego, or do you want to cover it by the phones?" And I'd always been good at covering things by the phone. I mean, I was very, very adept at covering stories by phone. I was always able to find somebody somewhere. I would look for people in the neighborhood, somebody named Smith in the neighborhood, even when we had legitimate phone books before the internet, and you had to pay for such things. And so I said, well, if I drive down there, especially at 7 o'clock at night, still part of rush hour traffic, it's going to take me 3 hours to get from LA to San Diego, if not more. And I am going to be out of the mix. There's going to be 3 hours, you're going to get nothing. And they said, okay. And I said, look, I'm good at handling the phones. Let me work the phones. They said, okay. So I did. I just started cranking on the phones. And we were given permission to monitor the all news station in San Diego at the time, which I forget the name of the call letters. But so basically, I monitored them. I recorded their air sound, and we were able to pick up lots of reporter reports and on the scene reports that we were able to use. And I was turning those around. And then I started calling people in the area. I called the cops and the fire department, people like that. I called them first. And then I started calling people in the neighborhood and people that were stores in the neighborhood, because I looked on the map and I found, this, that, and the other that I could find as far as regional. I'd matched the streets. I found the street name and the address where the McDonald's was. And then I looked on the same street for different businesses. And I forgot at this point, who I got a hold of. But basically, I got a Burger King, and I got a phone number, and I called somebody at the Burger King. And they said, yeah, this is what happened. The cops going down, we heard the gunshots, and I started getting that kind of tape. And then I was rolling at the same time on the all news station down in San Diego. And by the time I went home, which was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I had put out over 140 different pieces of audio, and which is unheard of. I mean, just unheard of. First of all, for that to happen, period, in such a short period of time on one story. But for one person to put all that out, they were impressed. They were impressed with my skills and what I did. So I came back in the next day, and Lou Geisman called me, and he said, "That was amazing, just amazing what you did." And I said, "Well, thank you. I appreciate that." He says, "So I want to offer you a job." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, we have lots of openings in New York and Washington. Where would you like to go?" And at the time, I was raising a young family, and I had 3 kids, and growing up in Southern California, and them in school, and everything. And I really didn't want to go to New York, and I really didn't want to go to Washington. Although Washington would have been a better choice than New York, and probably the choice, if I had to do it again, I would probably go to Washington. I'd have to consult with my family and everything. My family at the time liked the idea of going to Washington, but they understood that we had left LA to come back to LA. And so we were, more intense of staying in LA. And I told Lou, I said, "Look, I'll talk with my family, but, I really do want to stay in Los Angeles. And this is where it's become my home. It's where I want to work, and my opportunities are here, and we really like it, my kids and everything." And he totally understood, and it was not a big deal. And he said, "But, LA is not going to open up. We've got 2 people there, Rob Davies and Bob Fuss." And he said, "And we don't anticipate that opening anytime soon." And I said, "I understand that, but I'm here when you need me." So they continued to employ me that way. And sure enough, it wasn't that much later, um, in time for, I guess, right about in 1987, they moved Rob Navius to Miami, because he was our space correspondent. And he was going back and forth to Miami from Los Angeles once a month at least, to do astronaut interviews and put pieces together. And it was costing them a lot of money. And so they decided to open a Miami bureau just for Rob, so he would be there, and he'd cover the Southeast and whatever. Of course, you had hurricanes and that kind of stuff too. So, there was a lot of news coming out of Miami and the Southeast, plus he was there in Florida for the space stuff. And at the time, he was being considered for journalist in space. So they called me back and said, "Hey, LA opened up. Would you like to still come work for us?" And I said, "When do you want me to start?" And that's what started my career, my next 10 years at the UPI Radio Network, which is, I still consider probably my best time in radio journalism. I got to travel a lot, and I'll tell you more about that in another episode. But that's it for today. We'll stop by tomorrow. We'll tell you more, another fun story or tragic story, or one of my stories about life on the radio. Thanks again.